So we are beginning painting, and before we begin painting, we need to know about our tools. We are using acrylic paint, which you will have in containers like this. Everybody see? Okay. They have lids that are not perfect because I got them from the dollar store, but as long as you don't try to spill the paint, they should hold the paint inside. We also have palettes. Can everybody say palette?
Palettes.
Okay, this is for what?
Paint.
Holding the paint. The palettes have a lid. What is the lid for?
To hold in the paint.
To hold in the paint and make sure it doesn't dry out. Okay. I am working on making sure we have enough palettes for everybody, but today I don't because this is a big class. So you're going to be sharing, and sharing is caring. So each table will have 2 palettes that you will share, so one on each side of the table. You also have palette knives. Everyone say palette knife.
Palette knives.
Notice it's plastic. It's not going to cut you. It's not that special kind of knife. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Okay? The palette knife is used, first of all, to put paint onto the palette. You will never, 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 never dip your brush into this paint cup. Ever. I don't care if you need the solid color. You will always get out your own paint because this is the table's paint. If you mess up your own paint in your own palette, that is your business. But your table members don't want you messing up their paint, so we use the palette knife for that. Palette knife is easy to clean off on just a dry paper towel, or even out on your table. We'll usually clean that off. When do I need to clean off my palette knife?
Every time.
Immediately.
Before you need to use it again for something else, like getting the white paint out now. Okay. The palette knife has many uses. It's not just for getting out paint. It is also for mixing colors. So if I want to mix, what am I going to get when I mix black and white?
Gray.
Gray.
Gray. Can anybody guess what you might be doing today?
Mixing paint.
Value. We're going to be mixing paint to get value. Okay. Notice I not only moved the paint with my palette knife, I'm also mixing it with my palette knife. You will use palette knives and palette knives only for mixing. You can also use them for painting, and you'll be able to experiment with that when you want. It obviously gives a much different texture than if you use brushes. You have paint brushes. The gray table has all new paint brushes. Congratulations. So if any of those get messed up, I know exactly who to blame. The rest of you have paintbrushes of varying quality. Don't point out your classmates who you're already going to blame. This one, for example, the purple table has a brush that is just about done already. I am working on trying to revive brushes. Why do you think this happens?
Because people don't wash the paint good.
When people don't wash out the paint very well. Or if they dip the brush too far in the paint. Very good. Part of why we mix, I'm looking for example, there's not one in here. Part of why we mix paint with the palette knife and not the brush is because right here where the bristles meet the metal part, is this showing up? Yeah. This is a very sensitive part of the brush because when you mix the paint with the brush, the paint's going to get all the way up in here. When it dries up in here, you guys have seen those paintbrushes that are like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Hold on. Is that working? Yeah. I'll try. When they're like that? I'm trying. That's because the paint has dried up inside the bristles up here and it's forcing the bristles apart. The bristles are the hairs on the brush. We want those to stay nice and crisp and clean, like this one. And so we need to keep the paint down to the bottom half of the bristles. We don't want it to get up here. So part of how we do that is we mix paint with palette knives. When using acrylic paint, it often helps to have just a little bit of water on your brush. And so what I'll normally do is I'll dip it in the water and then I'll wipe it off on paper towel so it's just a little bit damp. I don't want my paint to get up higher on my brush than that. The amount of paint I put on my brush depends on what I'm trying to do. So I can paint nice and smoothly. What shape is this brush?
Square.
It's a square rectangle. We would call it a flat brush. And part of why I want to point that out is because if you're trying to get straight lines, that's what the brush is made for. You see what I'm doing here? I'm using the shape of the brush itself to help create those lines. That's going to be a very important trick for you to remember, because what you tend to do is say, oh, I'm doing lines, I need a little tiny brush. And notice this one's not been taken care of very well. So you'll go and you'll try to do your straight lines with this tiny brush. Will it work?
Maybe.
Yeah, it'll probably work. How much time are you going to spend doing it?
Too much.
Way too much time for what I could do with the right tool very quickly to get my straight line. So I have paint on my brushes I don't want anymore. I'm going to make sure I rinse them out. You'll have at least one can of water on your table. If you find that you are fighting over the can of water or can't all reach it, there are more cans in the filing cabinet. You're welcome to get another one. We just finished up a value project, so what do you think you're going to be doing with paint today?
Value.
Value. So I have, where on the value scale would you probably put that color?
About the middle.
About the middle. If I want to make a lighter value, what do you think I do?
White.
I'm going to add some more white. And that will work. I'll get a lighter value. However, you're going to find that it's going to be a more efficient use of paint if you start with white and add black instead of starting with black and adding white. The white is stronger than the black, so you'll have to put more white into black to make a difference than you will if you put black into white. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I might have said that backwards, just trust me. If I take that amount of black and about the same amount of white, does that look about the same?
Yeah.
Okay. And I take just a little bit of white and put it into the black. Does it make much of a difference?
No.
No. If I take the black, it's about the same amount I had, right? And put it into the white. Does it make a difference?
It's a little
It-
less than that color.
It does make a difference. So what you're going to be doing today is practicing mixing colors and along the way creating a value scale, just like you did with pencil, but now you're going to be using paint instead. You will find with paint that it will dry a little tiny bit different than how you put it down, so be prepared to make some changes, and that's okay.